Hi, everyone. Very welcome to all of you. And our session for today will cover why HR leaders must become strategic advisors. I'm super excited to welcome my co presenters, Christoph Bonnert, business consultant with the Josh Bersin Company, and Beatriz Rodriguez, Chief Talent and Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Officer at Bayer. If you have any questions during the today's webinar, really, please put them in the chat widget located at the bottom of your console. We'll be monitoring Q&A throughout the session and look forward to answering as we go through. Additionally, you can find the resource library widget at the bottom of your console as well for further information on today's conversation. If you experience any technical difficulties today, you can place those in the chat and a member of our team will help troubleshoot. With that, let's get started. So friends, in terms of Q&As, we would love to have thoughts coming in from you. We would love to address them during the course of the webinar. And let's get some context setting for our discussion now. See, the last 3 years have seen a lot. We've seen COVID, new way of working, that's called remote work, the great resignation and the great hiring happening in parallel. We've seen a war, economic blips, and whatnot. We thought we had seen significant change, right? Clearly, not enough. We have now OpenAI, ChatGPT already showing about the coming years that there's going to be a significant change in the future of work. Let me call attention to some important data points that were called out from the World Economic Forum on May 1st, on Labor Day. A research has been conducted by WEF over 800 companies, and it's predicted that by 2027, 83 million jobs will be lost, while 63 million jobs will be created. So, in all, a deficit of around 14 million jobs. What strikes notably is that one of the biggest contributors to changes in the job descriptions and our workspace will be caused by technology, primarily AI and robotics. And frankly, more than qualifications, the skills of people will help identify the people who will get picked up for the next roles. And at this stage, AI will be again to the rescue with its capability to understand skills and the adjacencies between skills. This will help us answer who can be repurposed from our existing workforce, what are their skills, what are their skill gaps, what do we need for the future, and how do we reskill, upskill while caring for employee experience. At the same time, these questions are going to be more at the heart of every organization's talent strategy like never before. And you would imagine that the HR organization is going to be bang in the middle of all of this. And HR will be expected to enable the employees and the organization to get ready for the future. So, a massive role coming up for HR leaders to become strategic advisors to the C suite. At this, I would love to involve my co-presenters, leaders on the panel here, and let me start with Beatriz. So, Beatriz, how is HR evolving to support these challenges?
Thanks so much, Ashish, to having me today. I think I would probably say that there are three big areas of evolution that we are going through from an HR perspective. I think one of them is really looking at integrating HR ecosystem, or basically what we call sort of looking at HR from a systemic point of view. And what this means is really looking at value to talent from an end-to-end perspective. I think we all have heard many times how our systems are silo, our processes are silo. When you look at HR organizations, they're actually as well, in most cases, silo by themselves. So when you think from a talent perspective and you've got different teams separate, so for example, you would have the learning organization from one side and the talent acquisition organization from the other. Really what we're trying to evolve is into really looking at it end to end from a systemic point of view. That takes a lot of effort because it means as well breaking some of the systematic barriers that we have had in our own HR function over the years. So I would say that's number one. Number two, I see a massive shift and evolution to a product management based organization versus a project organization. I think the way we probably need to think about HR is how do we bring products to our customers, to our employees that they really want to use, that means something to them, that are valuable, that are simple. And I think that product mindset is really one that we are evolving, coming from many years around programs and projects. I'm not saying that those disappeared, but I think the integrated product management is actually one that I think is important for us to have as a skill from an HR perspective. And third one, I think it's obvious perhaps for everyone, is that how HR is evolving in being a bit more forceful around transforming to a skill-based organization. It's something that we are seeing, is a trend that we cannot let it go. And from an HR perspective, we need to upskill ourselves at the same time that we upskill the organization. So it's a journey, but I think that's one where we'll see HR evolving from the way that we used to think about jobs versus skills. So I don't know, Christoph, what's your take on this as well?
Yeah, first of all, hi everyone. Happy to be in the call today. I can completely echo what you say, of course. Very much recognize the points you make, and I just maybe want to add one, because yes, we have to work more systemic, so we need to become more a product organization, bringing products to market and continuing to evolve those products throughout the lifetime. But I think it's also important to review or to rethink, how do we know what matters? And making sure that we work maybe a little bit less user feedback based, which we are used to. We see our employees and others as customers, and we listen to them, which is very important, don't get me wrong. But we also need to look at more talent intelligence type of concepts, so that we really check data, trends in the market, try to analyze them, try to predict them, to make sure that we not only look at optimizing what we have today, which you typically do when you get user feedback, but identifying what's going on in the market, what is happening around us, what are industry shaping activities happening there, grab them, and then base our interventions on those, because then you even more drive business impact.
Awesome. Thanks for the start. This leads me to the next question. What efficiencies should HR be looking to focus on to enable them to take on a more strategic role? Christoph?
Yeah, I think many of you out there, you I guess have a long experience in HR transformations and transforming HR functions. And what we typically do, or we typically did in the past, we optimized transactional work, repetitive work, we put it into shared service centers. So a lot of efficiency creation in the traditional sense, I think we all have done. And we need to continue, because there are still quite a number of opportunities to further drive those efficiencies. And ChatGPT, as you mentioned it in the beginning, or the technology behind it, the AI technology will will create tremendous opportunities to do even more in that space. So that will come for sure, and we might touch upon it later in the call. The other thing I want to mention is, maybe as important is rethink your existing practices, and that brings me back to what Bea said earlier around systemic HR. Is make sure that you put your efforts on things which really matter. We do many things in HR which are very good, which are in a way impactful, but if we are honest with ourselves, not all of them really drive the business impact we want to see. So move to more that intervention-based way of working, real-time design, step a bit away from those very complex, lengthy process designs, rolling it out, deployed in the organization. A year later, you might see the first results, which is extremely time-consuming. So think about different ways of driving impact, and the resources you have, focus them more on what really matters. And take talent intelligence, as I said earlier, as a basis to that, because then you leverage the resources in a way that you really, that you push the business impact the company expects. But Bea, back to you. Maybe some thoughts from your side on that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think one, if I think about your question, right? So what is the focus to basically enable us to take on a more strategic role? I think building what Christoph was saying, one of the areas that we receive that we see more feedback and evolving is internal mobility. I think is truly a game changer. And for me, I think what's happening in many organizations is that internal mobility is hindered somehow by how we've set up processes in the past 20, 30 years from an HR perspective. So when you really look at internal mobility, I actually feel is the way for us to unlock the potential of our people and really do it in a way that we systemically help them to upskill and develop internally. So the concept of internal mobility has been around for many years. It's not a secret. However, I think that when you think about an ecosystem and a world where upskilling, new skills are emerging, and where you think about the scarcity of certain skills in outside, and we won't be able to hire for those because our skill that everybody is sort of emerging and building. How we focus on internal mobility is truly, for me, a game changer from an HR perspective that the business and organization will see as more strategic moving forward. Our employees want development, our employees want upskilling, they want to be the best version of themselves. So how do we enable our ecosystem with technology, products, experience, talent intelligence, how we put all of that together in the service of leveraging our talent, the current existing talent, in a different way and helping them see that those opportunities for upskill in a simplistic way. So I would say that's one that we're focusing on. I think it's a big one for the future, and it's up to us to make it happen.
Awesome. Yeah. So I do see a question in the chat, but before I touch that, there's just a little thought that struck me while you were talking. And that is about, again, internal mobility only. And I think the beauty of the evolution now will be around how do we prepare our existing employees to upskill them and prepare them for the future, knowing that we have technology available with us, which can point out folks having those adjacent skills. How do we really prepare our HR organization and then the larger organization to work with these technologies and these tools to really prepare the organization for success and deploy internal talent, rather prepare internal talent rather than having to buy from outside every time, right? So here's a question that's come up, and I would also request others to please actively leverage this opportunity. So the question is that the real impact of AI tools and chat GPT, etc., is going to unfold only in the coming years. How do you recommend we assess our current technology and processes to understand if they are able to support operational efficiencies that you are discussing? May I request Christoph to start, please?
Yeah, that's a very good one. Thanks for the question, and at the same time also a pretty big one to answer. I mean, let me first go do a small step back. I mean, whenever you think about when you start reviewing your existing landscape or the technology you have in house, I would always start from a business case perspective. So, what are the top priorities for your particular company, which you definitively need to address? So, for example, if talent shortage, having the right skills in house, or a fundamental reskilling activity you need to deploy in your organization is one of the challenges you face, then focus on that particular aspect of your infrastructure. Because what has fundamentally changed compared to some years ago when we all moved to the cloud and we implemented the cloud-based solutions is that the infrastructure, the HR tech market has, you could say, almost exploded. There are so many different tools, companies out there who offer you very particular solutions for particular challenges or opportunities. And to make choices there is a very difficult thing to do because, again, there is so much out there. So really going into thinking through what do you require, what are your real challenges as an organization, and which are the suited tools, companies to help you there is of I say big importance. Otherwise, you end up with a suite of tools which you can hardly integrate in anything anymore. So it's really about thinking through what you require, and what is relevant for your organization. We have looked into that from a Bersin perspective. We also built a kind of a model how the new HR infrastructure look like. And maybe just one thing I want to mention is what we clearly see is start from the experience layer. So look at it from the top down, and the top means the people using the systems. What is the experience you want to create? What are the tools you can use to further drive productivity? And then you build or you leverage what you have in your organization and you start connecting. And we might end up with quite a variation of tools at those various levels you want to use. But yeah, maybe I see you.
I would
already
have
up and down.
practical perspective, like how we're doing it. So I think first is really here. This word go small to go big is where it really applies for me. You can load an entire ecosystem with the latest technology, but really, if you don't do change management properly, it could be so overwhelming that then you create the opposite.
Okay.
So for me, there's two things. One is we all have employee surveys. We all have data from our employees and our leaders that are telling us what are our gaps, what do they want to see, what do we need to work on. So be very critical about what and focus on the one or two that you want to solve for when it comes about either people, talent, systems, you name it. And I think that then the next thing is where you actually introduce the technology through pilots, use pilots in different ways, in different cultures as well, because what we found is that really the different technologies and the cultural aspect of it is actually really inferring the way that people use some of the technology. So have the right diversity of cultures and pilots to then scale in the future. So those two are for me the way to basically go through the bridge until technology, AI, and also some of our partners also accelerate their development because it is happening. So that's for me the bridge and transition to it in a way that doesn't overwhelm the organization.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for those inputs. And again, coming from a consulting as well as from a practical real world scenario, this is, I think, very, very relevant to our audience. At this stage, I think we are set to have a quick poll, and I'll request our team in the background to have it on the screen, which is right up. So friends, a request for you is for the next 30 seconds, please take your thoughts on these, and we would love to hear from you. What is your opinion as the biggest opportunities emerging for HR? Focus on skills, democratizing personal development, HR technologies such as AI, chatbots, automation of admin processes, or access to better data. And we would love to incorporate your inputs into the discussion as we go further. So do we have the results yet? I think they should be popping up anytime on the screen. So the number one item that emerges on the list is focus on skills to find and nurture talent. And the next ones are HR technologies such as AI, chatbots. And as Bea pointed out, that it's time for HR to also get into an upskilling mode for HR themselves and really figure out how to leverage these technologies better. And of course, another important point comes access to better data and actionable insights. Interesting. So let's see how we can cover these thoughts in the upcoming discussion. So we talk about what steps can HR take, but before that, Bea, could you please share with us the changes you have made or you are seeing as a result of this?
Yes. So let me very quickly perhaps give back to the audience just a thought on the most voted poll, right? So focus on skills to find nurture talent and sort of how we're seeing it. One of the first things that we saw is there's multiple understandings what a skill is, and it kind of like we kind of need to help the organization translate what do we exactly mean when we talk about skills. And I think that is part of the change management that is really difficult when you evolve into a skill-based organization. So we are doing, so one of the changes that we are doing, or one of the things that we are doing in this space is really focusing on 2 or 3 key core skills groups that we've got in the company, and translate those jobs into skills so that we can then start building our talent marketplace. Now, I know many organizations have done that as well. I think for me, the evolution is how do we make sure that the rest of the organization, not only the groups that you've chosen, how the rest of the organization see the value, and how can we translate what a skill really looks like. So the skill environment definitely is going to help us. And one of the things that for me we're betting on from what are the changes that I've done, if I ask your question, Ashish, is how skills, the world of skills is actually going to de-bias the workplace. That is for me one of the biggest bets alongside our internal mobility. Those are the 2 biggest bets that for me the skill environment transforming to a skill-based organization is going to help us. One, because when we look at the skills from a de-bias perspective, one of the focuses that we are doing is to really embed DEI into talent management with the use of technology. Before, we would do it from a process standpoint only. Now we want technology to help us to de-bias the processes and remove those systematic barriers that are ingrained in our traditional systems and processes the way they were designed. So one of the first areas that we've started is a completely redesign of reimagine actually talent acquisition, where we are reimagining the way our leaders interact, or the leaders really bring talent into the organization, but with already an embedded DEI lens into those processes. So you don't need any more, hopefully, the HR poking into the talent, into the leaders saying, have you hired enough of certain diversity? What you want is that leader is able to basically see and have that diversity from the get-go. And then we work on the capabilities and the mindset. So embedding DEI into talent management through technology and AI is one of the changes that we are doing, and we are starting that process, and hopefully taking that through the chain of also the rest of the talent management processes, so development, succession planning, and so on and so forth. The second one is we went through our HR transformation, started a year ago, and what we've done is that we were very conscious about the internal mobility and how can we accelerate talent. So we set up actually our overall talent organization of what we call, in the markets, what we call talent acceleration and culture leaders. So those groups, they are on the markets, they are on the ground, and really their purpose is to connect and to build pipeline for the future, so that we can accelerate the talent and we can start sparring the internal mobility from where our talent is. It doesn't happen at a global level process only, it happens where our talent is. So those are 2 of the things that we are doing at Bayer to advance us and to move into the future of HR as well. Mm. I don't know, Christoph, if you've got perhaps a couple of other examples.
No, I can very much echo that, and maybe just we ran a number of global studies recently, also actually with the help of Eightfold, so Global Workforce Intelligence projects, where we also looked at what do we call them pace-setter companies. You see that, by the way, in the resource library you have with this call. You see quite a nice and interesting webcast there. But when you look at pace-setters, so what they really define industry standards in their particular industry, and we looked at banking, at healthcare, and also at consumer goods. And what you see, what those pace-setters do, they also focus, to your point, where they focus a lot on talent, priority on retention, reskilling, internal mobility, skill-based, but also predicted future skill-based. So what do they need in the future? And then build an ecosystem around that with the talent marketplace and other tools And they call it, in a way, democratizing development and democratizing talent management. So enable the employees to find, let's say, to train and to develop themselves. And that makes a huge difference, because we still see many companies depending on recruiting, putting a lot of effort in retention, which is very often looked at rewards as a bit of a financial element to it. But what the real pace setters do is look at it much more holistically and put quite some effort into that space. So very much recognize what you see now. About an example, we talk, of course, we talk to many different companies, but I thought about one which could be extremely relevant for today. So actually a company who is heavily, let's say, involved in airline, in plane technology. And their particular challenge is they, like many companies, they, on one hand, they have the traditional world of airline engine or plane engines, which of course over time and pretty fast needs to transform into electrification and all of these things. But they have a huge number of engineers who live in a traditional world of careers within their engineering department. But they have also younger generation in the workforce who simply don't see the career opportunities, who start questioning a bit what is going on, also from a technology perspective. So they thought through how can they fundamentally change the way they work with talent and talent development. And they also call it democratizing talent management or democratizing development. And they use skills as a starting point, segmenting their workforce into people who want to develop within the engineering space, nothing wrong with that, people who are very much willing to think outside, look out for opportunities outside the current space, and people who are very happy to experiment and just do things differently. And for those various groups, they build, let's say, different opportunities, career opportunities within those groups, and offering different development programs, learning programs, but also, for example, introduced kind of a gig working environment. So they allowed people to spend a certain time of their work week to move into gig working. And it was quite interesting to see that where they would expect it, the younger generation would take that. That's true, but also some of the very senior experienced engineers all of a sudden showed interest in just trying out something else. And to us, it is a very interesting example where a pretty much traditional company driven by HRs, was the head of talent at the time, who set that up, in a way changed the culture of how an organization works with talent. So quite an interesting example, which also shows how important skills and talent and internal mobility is for the future of your organization.
Got your point. Well, there's another question coming up now, which is, where should HR focus to make realistic and impactful organization changes, as well as, I'd say, the cultural changes associated with this? Beatrice, can I request you to pick this up?
Yeah, I would. So I think first and foremost is delivering. And there's a caveat, which is we cannot deliver the way we used to deliver over the past 20 years. The way that for us, for now, I see us really making impact is when we deliver end to end. So this question of delivering end to end is not easy. Still you see organizations delivering through HR operations, and then through talent, and then through learning, and then through acquisition, and then so you're still somehow delivering through the different areas of HR. I think the shift is when you really deliver end to end, where the organization doesn't see what are the different parties that are bringing bringing everything to life. So it's not easy delivering end to end, because you need to re-engineer most of the processes, systems that have been disconnected or poorly connected over the last few years. So that delivering end to end, where you see holistically to the entire value chain, is probably one that if we manage to transform us from an HR perspective, we would have the biggest impact, productivity, and efficiency too. Second, I think is you were talking about democratizing development. For me, this is really important in terms of how do we really is realistic. I think days are gone where only development or opportunities for development are for the top talent or the high potentials. Today, we learn from everything, from everyone, online, I mean, you name it, right? So why internally we actually don't bring to life that ecosystem where everybody is a talent and everybody can upskill and everybody has access. So this question of access and democratizing development for me is really, really important because it's happening outside of the corporate world of our organizations. Why we cannot do it internally? Yeah. So that's really as well is a difficult one because again, it requires a rewiring of our systems and our development philosophy. All of a sudden, if you've got as an individual access to from your internal job marketplace to apply for all the positions that you've been matched from a skills perspective, what's the governance around it? So we don't have internally, there's a lot of effort around defining some of these boundaries that is part of the evolution. And the third one from an impact perspective is really about looking at succession planning with the lenses of skills to be future-proof. We've been doing succession planning cases based on a position, a job, the person that does today that job and who can do the job that person does. I think we need to basically decouple the succession planning from a job perspective, but looking at skills from a future-proof perspective. So that is where I think as well we would make impact in the future and make sure the sustainability and the business continuity of our leadership. So those three. I don't know, Christoph, if you have any insights there.
No, again, I couldn't agree more. Fully recognize that, particularly also what you said about that HR needs to work differently. I think you mentioned it. We also call this systemic HR. So just think about in a very different way. Almost think about your body. If you have whatever, you get a virus, the whole body reacts to it. It's not only one part of your body fights the virus, but others make sure that you sleep well, that you eat well, that you get your energy back, whatever. So this is how we think we should look at HR. And I just want to add one more point about the impact of HR. When you look at what HR organizations typically do is they look at recruiting, they look at retaining, they look at reskilling, development. But so 3 R's, we added a 4 R, which is redesign. Because when we looked at, I talked about the global workforce intelligence studies, but also other insights, when very often those 3 will not help organizations to fill or to create or attract the talent into your organization, but also get work done. And where HR organizations should step up is thinking about how to redesign work. And how if we don't have enough people in the organization, but we can't recruit them, we can't highly likely retain them because they might retire, for example, and there's a limit to reskilling. We need to rethink how we organize ourselves differently as an organization, how we organize our work differently to get work done. Now, skills is a very important part of it, but this is this 4th R. So work design, not creating org charts and reporting lines and all of that, but really thinking about how you organize work. From our point of view, from my point of view, is one of the big impact drivers HR organizations have, because who else should do it? So it's really something where also the expertise of an HR teams need to be built in that particular space. I have a few examples, but I'm looking in the view of time. I think I should stop with this one, but it's for us really important. Yeah.
Thank you, Christoph. There's a very interesting question here in the chat, and this has come from Anna, that says, what advice do you have on defining future skills when building a skill taxonomy at scale? Beatrice, may I ask you to take this?
Yes, so Anna, it's a great question. We're going through that at the moment. My advice is, again, start small to go big. So start by, potentially your 1 or 2 core job groups. Go through the tedious process of translating those jobs to skills. And then at the same time, you need, as you are seeing those skills emerging, you are seeing the interference with the current skill taxonomy, and then you keep updating that. So I think I don't think there's a way to actually accelerate that process, because it is probably the biggest homework that you have to do. There's different ways where today, and I think the difference with technology today is that we can accelerate that path versus in the past where, our HR teams used to do it on Excel sheet, right? So I think now technology can help us to accelerate that process, how that looks like. But it is really choose the one or two groups, functions that are most relevant for your organization and work it through in parallel. And then you continue to evolve and add other groups. There's no secret sauce, just doing it, as you go through. So that's for me, Ashish, how you do it practically.
Christoph, you want to add to that, please?
Yeah, and definitely, I think the big one, there are many advantages when you're thinking about skills versus competencies, which we did in the past. I think the biggest advantage from my point of view is that skills, in a way, is a global language. So also what you guys do in Eightfold and other companies is you define skills, which are, the definition of skills is comparable across companies and even across industries. And that has a huge advantage because you can compare yourself with others, which was very difficult in the past if you do your own in-house competency frameworks. So to the question is that if you want to go into a certain business or you want to move your organization into a different type of business, which you don't do today, it's very difficult to understand what type of skills do I need. But since skills is now a global language, you can look at industries who are already there. What are they doing? What type of skills do they have? And that could be something completely different, not related to what you do today. But with this global language of skills, comparing and getting real market insights on what these skills look like is easier than in the past, or it's finally possible. Let's put it that way. So I would definitely look outside and learn from the leaders, the pace setters of that particular industry.
Honestly, questions are pouring in, and my only hand-folded request to our audience would be that, yes, if we are not able to pick up your questions, we will definitely want to come back to you later. So coming to the last section of our discussion today, last year, SAGE's report talked about the changing face of HR in 2024. It found that almost 60% of boards are now looking to the HR department to drive transformation. In your experience, is HR well enough equipped and supported to make this happen? And I would request Christoph to pick this up, please.
Yeah, I'd happy to do so. And I think in a certain way, we already touched upon some of the topics. First of all, fully agree. We see that as well. In the past, we kind of said HR should sit at the table. Well, we are sitting at the table. We are asked to join. The question is, can we deliver? And if you want to deliver, I think what is really important is, come back to the talent intelligence piece I said earlier, really make sure you get numbers, you get data, you get outside views, you speak business language, because then you will solve business problems. Look at it more from an intervention perspective, systemic HR, they are talked about it as well. Look at particular business challenges, put intervention teams on it, make sure you deal with it as a product, make it happen, test it in the field, improve it while going, like you would do with a product, and retire it when it's not needed anymore. So really working those cross-functional teams. In essence, it's upskilling also your organization, upskilling your HR business partners, upskilling your leaders, making sure that they are capable of driving it. I personally think, being in HR for 30 years in the past and now with Bersin, we have the opportunity, we have the skills to do it, but we have to rethink how we do it. And with that, I give to Bea for some comments on what I just said.
Very quickly, if we are honest with ourselves, I think COVID and the aftermath of COVID, talking to the context that you started, Ashish, really surfaced many of the blind spots that HR had. I mean, now what I think the opportunity for us to shape, and this is the opportunity. So actually, it helps us to really see we need to step up. But the opportunity to shape the perception is when we really stop talking about processes, policies, and tools. I'm not saying that they are not important, but they are more in the background. We need to know how we look at those. But from a perception perspective, we need to shift that conversation from process, policies, and tools to actually employee experience, productivity, and skills to competitiveness. So when you really think about that value chain of the potential of what we could be and impact and bring to the organization, from outside in to inside out, this is where I think our perception goes a long way, because we are at the service of our business. So yeah, so that's probably what I would complement to your comments, Crystal.
Thank you. There is this question in the chat that I can see. What if our HR team doesn't have technical reporting skills? And how has technology empowered HR in terms of data and talent intelligence? Any thoughts, please?
I can take that actually. So I actually think that it's a positive thing what technology has done a little bit to our HR organization. And why? Because it actually has removed us from being the ordered intake of people leaders that were asking reports and reports and reports for HR to download from our systems and send me the report of my headcount, send me the report of my this, send me the report of the other. So I actually think that technology is helping us to elevate a little bit the role of HR and not being just the ordered intake of reporting. Now, what I think is shifting, so if our HR teams don't have reporting capabilities, you could argue that today probably it is okay, because technology is going to give all of those insights to our leaders. And what we need to focus on is actually, one, educating our own HR. So the HR capability now probably is not so much on reporting, but it's actually much more in anticipating trends and bringing insights to the organization and helping leaders and coach leaders on how they also look into those data. So that's the shift, that technology has empowered HR to have a role that is more influential than actually a role that it was more ordered intake reporting. That's my personal view, but I don't know, Christoph, with your experience, if you see anything different.
No, I definitely agree, and I think on the technology piece, the big advantage is some years ago there was hardly anything out there. So many companies, like the company I worked for before, also started to build own in-house analytic teams and try to experiment with tools. There's so much out there in the meantime. If you don't have it in-house, companies who can help you building those creating those insights, and tooling is also much more accessible than it was in the past, where you had to reprogram your mainframes to get anything out of these systems. Where today this is much easier. But I think it starts first, what you said, Beocha, like a lot with the mindset of thinking differently about how to identify business challenges and how to go upon them. And when you think about those, and you will find ways to get the data at the end. Start with the problem and then underpin it with the data.
Sounds good. And well, HR needs to be proactively engaged with the C-suite, right? What are your inputs to HR leaders on the call?
Bea, you want to?
My inputs go outside of what HR needs and look at the situation outside in. So start by, how do you really solve all the business challenges? So you can speak the language of the business and understand how to better meet. Don't look at launching HR products and HR technology just for the sake of having the last and the best tool out there. Really, especially in an environment of cost pressures, return on the investment, it's not unlimited today what we can do. So I think that for me is really about shifting the focus on how you make impact from outside in versus the centric view. And I think that as I said, so if you start thinking about that and looking at the entire value chain and bringing to the business the perspective of how you deliver end to end, I think that it would definitely engage the C-suite and speak their own language too.
Mm. Yeah, I fully agree, and I think also adding to that is, let's see that also as a huge opportunity. The people, all the whole ecosystem around it is one of the top things which is in the mind of leaders and CEOs for the right reasons. So there is a big space to grab, and just be confident of yourself that you can grab that space, because you can. We are the experts in that field, and we know a lot. We have done a lot, and there are many tools and support things available to us. It's more like you said, we step out of the processes, do another performance management introduction, which takes a year, but really grab what is out there. Like COVID, we did so many fantastic things in COVID with a throughput time of 3 weeks, and it can be done. And that mindset, I think, is for me, that makes the big difference in driving impact.
So, well, thank you so much, Bea and Christoph, for sharing your insights, your experiences, and your words of wisdom on a topic which is increasingly relevant to today's HR function. If there is any points you want to revisit, friends on the call, this recording will be available on demand, and we will notify you once it's live. Before we leave, just want to remind you that there are related materials to today's conversation available in the resource widget. Eightfold is hosting our Cultivate conference in London on June 1st, and there are limited spaces still available. You can find out more information and register from the link in the resource widget. We'd love to welcome you over there. And for today, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Our profiles are on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.